Hey, it's Conrad, the mortgage guy, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Conrad Thompson, how we doing? Happy My World recording day. We're going to get to a topic today. I promise you that. And man, oh man, how ironic it is what our topic is going to be. It's quite topical. The world of wrestling keeps on churning. Conrad, I have had a busy life since we last spoke. Up in Quincy, Illinois for a baseball game throughout the first pitch. Yes, right down the middle. Right down the middle is the strike. Springfield Lucky Horseshoes. First responders night. I was very, very pleased with all that. I'm ready to record today. See where you got things are at. See if we can wake up our producer extraordinaire, Dave Silva. He's a little light on the scattered, smothered, and covered today. But other than that, Connie, maybe most importantly that I didn't share with you, we've texted a bunch. I got the jet skis in the water, Conrad.
Oh, how about that?
Cody's fired up. Cody is really fired up. He wasn't too fired up for them Pacers getting their ass stomped. Our friend Dawkins is probably in mourning right now. But anyway, it's 1-1. So, Connie, how we doing today, pal?
Better than I deserve. Excited to be with you here today. Our topic is going to be Ron Killings. Of course, he has been the headline news everywhere we look. But before we talk about Killings, I do want to touch on some big news that happened over the weekend. It was revealed on Saturday that WrestleMania is indeed headed back to Las Vegas. We've heard that this was imminent. And man, what a Brinks truck they probably had to back up. Because as a reminder, WWE had already announced that next year's WrestleMania was in New Orleans. They held a press conference with The Rock, had a Little Wayne theme song for The Rock. I mean, it felt like a big deal. Then a few weeks ago, they walked it back and said, hey, no WrestleMania, but you do get Money in the Bank. And now we've seen that WrestleMania is going back to back in Las Vegas. Of course, we saw this years ago with WrestleMania 4 and 5, both being in Atlantic City, also a gambling hub. But I think next year is going to be a little different, Jeff, because whereas this year WrestleMania in Las Vegas fell on Easter weekend, Easter is actually a couple of weeks prior to WrestleMania next year. Are you surprised to see that they're back in Las Vegas? And do you want to venture a guess what the terms of this deal are? Because I assume when it comes out, it's going to be mind-blowing.
Yes. I think I've already shared this with you, but I'll share it with the audience. When I heard the news, I immediately go, wait a minute. That's not Easter weekend. I made sure that the Sundays, and I'm like, no, that's way up into April. Conrad, in a way, yes, very surprised, but then I caught myself before that really had time to kind of bake in my brain, and I just said, nope, this is TKO. This is the new WWE. So all the quote unquote rules that I think everyone has been so accustomed to, WrestleMania, Detroit and Chicago and New York and Boston and LA and Dallas and New Orleans and maybe in Atlanta. And, there's talk of here in the hometown, quite the buzz, candidly, behind closed doors, and they're going to get a Mania and all this. Well, at the end of the day, it's he who has the biggest checkbook gets WrestleMania. The mayor of London, I think, has tweeted, and the folks in Saudi are probably going to be waiting patiently. But as we talked last week with the Australian date, the Australian show being called Crown Jewel, man, there were certainly some. I guess you could say we went down that rabbit hole of Mania going to Saudi, but back in Vegas, I think 5 million was the number around that. I may be way off, but I mean, all the perks involved, there's a lot, it's a lot more than that. But yes, the check written and all that goes into it, it is definitely the new WWE in so many ways. I just think, Conrad, what's going to be interesting, and you being the podcaster extraordinaire, there is going to come a time at some point when the story behind the story of what went down for how they, shifted on New Orleans, and New Orleans is God almighty, lots of Super Bowls, lots of big events. It's not like that city is not equipped. So for them to, like you just said, make the announcement publicly, and gosh, we were in New Orleans not long ago, and I can remember the signs down Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They had already kind of pre-announced it or whatever it is. Yeah, for them to shift gears, lots and lots and lots of money were involved. And I do. So I'm not surprised, but this is another pivot by TKO.
I wanted to bring that up because you said, hey, this is all the things that we were used to and accustomed to with WrestleMania, that's out the window. Carl Anderson, who you and I think a lot of, he has a great podcast with Doc Gallows, great friend of the show. The name of their podcast is called Talk and Shop. And Carl had a quote that I wanted to read to you. He said, it's not the WWE anymore. Guys, it's a company called TKO. I don't look at WWE as WWE anymore. They're TKO now, and that's great. That's good for them, but it's not the same thing. I think a lot of people feel that way just because Vince isn't there. But yeah, in more ways than one, this is not WWE anymore. It is indeed TKO, right?
Yeah, and I said it, and I've gotten interesting the feedback I've gotten. They're like, hey, I really never looked at it that way. But I do. I think it just sounds, it to me, and this is Jeff talking to Jeff, the clarity of it was, at the end of the day, Vince is third generation promoter, if you will. And at the end of the day, every decision he made was based on what he thought the wrestling fan wanted. And the rules are rewritten. Those rules no longer apply. TKO does what is best to get a return on investment. They are their master, if you will, and you can't serve two masters. Their master, if you will, is private equity. Their powers that be, and get the return on investment, the highest return they possibly be. And when they quit getting the highest returns they can, they're going to sell the asset. I just think it's that simple. I just think they're going to burn and churn and burn and churn and burn and churn. My grandmother, used to always, not teach, preach, just in so many ways. Son, as a promoter, you always have to prepare for rainy days. Well, when the rain comes on TKO, they are changing cities and changing assets. I do. I just think it's that simple. They are not concerned at all, other than the return on investment, and that's the business they're in. So I'm not that's not a knock. I want to be clear that is not a dig. That is not a knock. They are doing exactly what they're set out to do and what their investors want them to do. Matter of fact, require them to do. So it's just a different playing field. And Carl, what he's saying, I think a lot of folks are saying, and it's just kind of the awakening, and it's going to continue down this road. I think we're just scratching the surface on what a different company it is.
Speaking of a different company, there's been a lot of chatter about Vince McMahon starting another wrestling company. Over the weekend, of all places, TMZ caught up with Shane McMahon, and there's a video of Shane on the TMZ website where he's answering some questions. He was asked about the rumors of him and his father perhaps starting a new wrestling promotion, and Shane said something like, "You never know what's going to happen out there. Of course, anything can happen in WWE, but those rumors are false." He was also asked about AEW, and he said something like, "I had a meeting with AEW and wish them continued success, but it's not WWE. It's not the company that I helped build, but you never know what's going to happen in this business." He was rather non-committal on any of it. It is interesting, though, that this is not just a conversation that's happening amongst hardcore wrestling fans. When that was on TMZ, I thought to myself, this isn't accidental.
Shit. That's what I'm cracking up. Oh, TMZ just strategically
randomly ran into Shane. Just an accident. Just he was out to dinner and they just happened to be there.
I love
this is strategic, right?
Wait, so I know that TMZ was there to report on, who knows, maybe the NBA finals, getting Shane's comments, or maybe who Shane's with, or maybe the Stanley Cup, or maybe the Tony Awards were this past weekend, or College World Series, anything. But man, oh man, what timing. And Harvey Levin and TMZ reporters, just, they're always on top of things, Conrad. It's amazing that they had the wherewithal to gather their thoughts and just ask those rapid fire questions. So hats off. You know, what a coincidence, if you will.
Well, so no, listen, you and I are having fun because we're able to sort of read between the lines. But some of our listeners, they just take things at face value and they think, oh, well, they just ran into him. I get that.
Come on.
We know for sure. I shouldn't say we know for sure. It stands to reason in all logic that this was orchestrated, co-opted, if you will. But the question is, why, Jeff? Do you think they just want to keep their name out there and keep the rumor mill going and keep the buzz going about what they're going to be doing next? Or is there more to it than this?
Conrad, can I ask you to do me a favor? Because
Please.
Old sayings don't get to be old sayings unless they're true.
That's right.
And there's an old saying, follow the money.
Yep.
What does actually that mean? Before I give my answer, what does that mean, Conrad?
Well, it means there's usually a financial angle to every move or decision that's made in business. And if you wonder sometimes, hey, why would so and so do that? And why did this happen that way? If you think about whatever happened in financial terms and you start to work backwards and you follow the money, then you can find the root of the motivation for whatever decision or move just happened.
And where there's smoke,
there's fire.
It is interesting, Conrad. We are having fun, and I love chatting it up with you here, and a whole lot of chatter. Shout out Dave Green. But that's a good question. Why? Obviously, I think it's TBD, but 14th and what is it?
Yep.
There, as things are transpiring, and when you see Vince sell a little stock here and there, and then you see
a little, you mean $250 million last week? A little?
Well, and
Nick Khan sold $4 million worth of stock last week, and Vince sold $250 million.
Okay. It's all part of the plan. I know. It's reported. It's all part of the plan. But, Vince is sitting on a boatload of cash. He's, at the end of the day, I just said it a few minutes ago, he's a third generation promoter, and his son was randomly caught by TMZ camera, fourth generation. I don't think they're changing line of business at this stage of the game. It's just what is next. What's next? It's in their blood. The entrepreneurial spirit is thriving. It is what it is. It's going to be really, really interesting. You kind of look at the different owners around the NBA and the NFL, and see Jerry Jones on his Dallas Cowboy radio show, and you hear different chatters and this and that. And all of those owners, if you will, that just incredible high net worth that have got into, owning franchises and all that kind of stuff. I'll say, the computer world, or the two brothers, Conrad, in the mortgage business that buying part of the White Sox and own the Phoenix Suns. All those guys, all very wealthy, like Vince. And I know some people say, "Oh, they got a lot more money than Vince." Yeah, true. But the big, massive difference in Vince and all those is Vince made all of his money out of promoting. It's what he does. So when he ventures out and does bodybuilding or football, he's venturing out of his space. And a lot of these owners, they're venturing out of how they made their money and they're getting into the sports world. So at the end of the day, the core of the McMahon family is promoters. It's going to be interesting to see what that next move is going to be, because I don't say this time last year, but not so long ago in the McMahon family, I don't think people would have called Vince and Shane. But look, Shane is in his 50s. He's, a lot of way in the prime of a man's business career. So I just think always keep in mind the next move is Vince and Shane, not Vince.
Well, I tell you what, we don't know what's next for the McMahons, but I know what the next move for you should be. I'm talking about Factor. Make this your best season yet. They've got nutritious 2-minute meals from Factor, and eating well has never been this easy. You just heat it up and enjoy. That's it. Gives you more time to do the things you really enjoy. Let's get outside. Let's get on the lake. Let's get on the beach. Let's ride those jet skis. It's the summer of no worries thanks to Factor. You don't have to worry about prepping or cooking anymore because Factor meals arrive fresh and ready to eat, and it's perfect for any active lifestyle. They've also got 45 different weekly menu options. You can pick something for everybody. You can choose from things like Calorie Smart or Protein Plus, Keto, and so many more. Factor's going to help you power up your day with satisfying breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and they've even got you covered with guilt-free snacks and desserts. What are you waiting for? Go check out Factor. It's perhaps the worst-kept secret in professional wrestling. Once upon a time, when guys would have to travel and make towns, man, luggage didn't even have bags on it. Luggage didn't even have wheels on it. But now people travel with a food bag. Yeah, they got one bag for their gear. That's a carry-on. The other carry-on, the food bag. Yeah, we're going to make sure that we're fueling our bodies right, even on the road. Well, this is what they're doing on the road, but you can do it at home. It makes it so simple. I highly recommend it. We've tried all the different food delivery services here on the program, and even when they're not advertising, Factor keeps coming to Jeff's house and my house. And it's because it tastes great and it truly is premium. We're talking restaurant quality. They got things like steak and shrimp and everything else, and it tastes fantastic. Don't take our word for it. Go try it right now. Get started at factormeals.com/myworld50off and use our code myworld50off. You'll get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's myworld50off at factormeals.com/myworld50off. You'll get 50% off plus free shipping with the code myworld50off at factormeals.com/myworld50off.
Had a fight in the Jarrett household, Connie, over about in the last 4 or 5 days. Yeah, when was that? That was Saturday, around noon. Somebody ate my salmon, my Factor meal salmon, and it was fighting words. No, it is the best. It is my go-to. So I say it every week, but I got to give the sponsors a true testimonial shout out. Factor Meals /myworld50off. It is a game changer. So guys out there that live a busy lifestyle, 2 minutes and you have a very nutritious meal. Do it, boys.
Go check it out. We love Factor, and you will too. Hey, I also loved Money in the Bank over the weekend because we saw a big return from Ron Killings. Before we talk about that, though, I want to talk about what happened in the afternoon. It was the very first AAA WWE show. Of course, those are companies you've worked at for a long time. We're both pretty good buddies with Jeremy Borash and Dorian Roldan, and we're super happy for their success. It felt like an authentic AAA show in the fact that they started the same ceremonial way that a lot of AAA shows do. I love that they leaned into the way the presentation was on the very first When Worlds Collide, except instead of having the red, white, and blue ropes, well, maybe to counteract some of the CMLL programming, we saw the green, white, and red ropes and turnbuckles. I loved it. Thought it was a great touch. And my first time seeing a AAA show live in person was 3 years ago. And I left that show thinking, man, Mr. Iguana, if he was in the WWE, he would be such a megastar, because the merch opportunities here in America are a lot different than down in Mexico. If you've been to a show at Arena Mexico, and if you haven't, by the way, tickets are on sale now for AEW. They're going to be there next week at AEWTIX.com. If you've never been to Arena Mexico, it's like the Madison Square Garden of Lucha Libre. I highly recommend you check it out. But Jeff, you've been there. The street is just lined with vendors, and a lot of them, for lack of a better word, are selling bootleg merchandise. So I don't know that the revenue streams in Lucha Libre are the exact same as they are in American wrestling, because they really enforce that, whereas they kind of celebrate the bootleg life down in Mexico. But dude, Mr. Iguana was the biggest star coming out of that show. I think so many people were excited to see what's possible with his character. You know, this is a fun, creative character, and I could see this being a big hit with kids and casual fans. I'm super happy for Mr. Iguana getting a little bit of love. What'd you think of the show, Jeff?
Well, you know, I have mixed emotions, but I say that I'm going to say it with all positivity because JB, you know, we've covered it on the podcast all the way back to, I mean, even before the Summer of No Worries, when WCW Live and Bob Ryder and JB and James, the chicken plucker from Kentucky that were calling in. But the boy from Minnesota done good. But no, all kidding aside, I'm very happy for JB. But as well, you know, the Roldan family, when you really think through the creation that started in 93, and, you know, they really built it. And what was the original year of Worlds Collide?
94.
Was that just a year later? Gosh. Yeah. But, you know, in a lot of ways, that in America was a pinnacle in a lot of ways. And it's been a long road, and Lucha Underground, and, you know, you just kind of hit it. Mexico is a different culture. It's a different country. The monetization of professional wrestling is just done differently there. You know, rights fees aren't the big deal. It's sponsorships and live events, but there's merchandise. You said all this. So I'm looking at it, you know, through several different lenses. And so the first presentation, and I want to harp on that because me and you text about it. And I was, yes, nothing really surprised me off that show. I thought the presentation was good. On kind of the flip side of it, though, you know, there were no exoticos, there were no minis, there was no hardcore.
Well, there was a table spot.
Yeah, but and I say that, Connie, with all due respect, you know, the AAA that they acquired, that they purchased, their version of hardcore. And that's what I'm saying is this is TKO's version or WWE's version of AAA. And it's fantastic because congrats on the acquisition and everything goes with it. I'm really curious to see where it goes because I just think that there's a brand and they can what's EB's better than, less than, different than.
Yep.
I think they got a real opportunity to present a product different than. And I don't think, and probably by design, they weren't much different than an NXT show. But I will say, you know, Iguana and several of the talent on there stood out. But, you know, and Iguana is bilingual. So boy, oh boy, they will merch him up before we know it. Here it comes. I'm curious to see where they go with that. Like, how soon, Gani, how long will it be before Iguana is on NXT?
I mean, he was on the Money in the Bank. That was a Money in the Bank crowd shot right there. Like
crowd shot. But how long before he makes it to NXT programming?
July.
Yeah, that's what I thought. A month.
I mean, I
good. I mean, that's they're going to cross pollinate across all brands. The expectation that, oh man, WWE bought AAA, they're not going to keep it the same. They're just not. I thought that was very, very clear, and I didn't know. Look, but it's a business. They bought the IP, and I think that'll be front and center. And I think Iguana is about to lead the charge.
Well, now hang on. To be clear, when Worlds Collide was a joint show between NXT and WWE, we haven't seen what a just AAA show looks like. So we'll see. But I do know in the meantime, it is a huge hit. WWE announced through Variety that when Worlds Collide set a record for the largest live audience in company history for a YouTube broadcast. It peaked with 764,389 live concurrent viewers. And all told, 4.1 million viewers saw the show on YouTube in the first 24 hours.
Damn.
Hashtag Worlds Collide was the #1 trending topic globally on Saturday, and WWE generated more than 32 million social views across all platforms in the first 24 hours. Jeremy Borash, of course, is the guy who was leading the charge here. It was described as a Jeremy Borash production. So shout out to JB, who you and I are big fans of here on My World.
Hey, Dave, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Dave, put that shot back up. What do you notice there, Conrad? Not Iguana or the talent or the ref. They had a full house and they darked quite a bit of it. I think that's a forum deal. Opposite art camera, there's kind of a funky looking backdrop. I noticed that, which
I loved it.
Yeah, I was going to say now that did give it a different production feel than a Raw or a SmackDown. Yeah, I'm wondering what if you can kind of see right at the very top of Vikingo on our video, folks. It says Kia Forum. There's kind of a sign there that doesn't, to me, pop on TV. I've always thought that about that as far as a television production, but I thought that the ring, the look of the show was awesome.
It was indeed awesome. Speaking of awesome, Shotsi made her first appearances outside of WWE over the weekend. She was among those recently released. We know that she was an indie darling before she had a chance to get signed to WWE. Had a lot of fun there, but over the weekend, she came out and worked some hardcore matches. And I guess some fans online were kind of trolling her a little bit. I was kind of surprised to see this, but there's a guy on Instagram, I guess, who says she went from making great money to trying to kill herself for some change. And Shotzi replied, I made more money in 2 days than what WWE paid me for a week.
Boom.
Once again, proof, Jeff, that there is life after WWE. You just got to be willing to go get it, right?
You got to hustle. And I think it's the best thing for so many folks to really the nature of the business has radically changed, not overnight, but progressively, in that a lot of folks, and I was talking to a guy at the gym who wants to break in, and they see kind of the ID, and then they get to NXT, and I'll just say, kind of get in the factory, if you will, and the power plant. I'm not singling that out, but the power plant WCW, it was that. And I try to encourage guys that, man, look at it almost like the music business. Learn to play with any and everybody, play around the world nowadays, learn your own style. But if you only in one system, whew, man, oh man, you're really, really going to have an uphill battle because you're not really earning the essence of the business. So, good for her. But if you hustle out there, any aspiring talent out there, get to work, boys. Get you a day job and hustle, hustle, hustle.
Speaking of hustling, boy, there was some last week by WWE to unwind their mistake. Fans took over Monday Night Raw last week with chants of "We want truth." They did it again on Friday night to John Cena. He responded, "You can't handle the truth." But it turns out Nick Khan knew that he could handle the truth. He just needed to pick up the phone, offer him some cash, and agree to let him use his real name. And Ron Killings came back in the main event of Money in the Bank. An incredible response. I mean, really, what a response that he got when he debuted, or returned rather. And lots of people were discussing, whether or not this was the plan or not.
Sure.
And of course, that became the entire topic of conversation at the press conference. Before we talk about that, I want to just let everybody know, in case you missed this, R-Truth's return at Money in the Bank got 45 million views across all platforms in the first 24 hours. So to say that this guy was a hidden gem under their nose the entire time and a beloved figure is an understatement. 45 million impressions in the first 24 hours of his return. Of course, after the show, that's what everybody wanted to talk about with Triple H. Triple H was doing a post pay-per-view press conference, which has become the norm. As a reminder, the reason WWE does those is because they're trying to sell sponsorships, Jeff. And the rumor and innuendo is that they get a boatload of cash for the pre-show, they get a boatload of cash for the post-show, and well, they found a way to monetize everything else. I mean, they've monetized the tables to be snap into a Slim Jim tables. We even saw the debut of the Fireball ladder, which I'm sure you probably experimented with in downtown Nashville 15 years ago.
Many a night.
And
and fell off.
You and I even joked that, at some point, and you said, hey, that was actually an idea once. I know I'm going to sidebar here, but I joked that, hey, maybe they'll start selling ad space on the bottom of Enhancement Talent boots, like the soles of their boots. Why not? But you said you and your dad actually had an idea like that once upon a time?
In the early days of TNA. So you have to really, and I think we're going to, we'll get into this, but NASCAR as of today versus late 90s, early 2000s, it just exploded in those days. And look, it was a different day and age. And obviously prior to social media, so it was, I call it the golden age of cable television, and every race was getting monster ratings, and they were selling out. People can't even fathom 160,000 people in Bristol, Tennessee for a race, or Talladega or Indianapolis 5, just not just tens of thousands, hundreds. I mean, it was just wide open. But when you go to a guy a NASCAR driver who would get smashed in the wall, I mean, literally inches from death and turned over 15 times. Well, Elliot, can you tell us about that wreck of near death? Well, first off, I'd like to thank my sponsors, Coca-Cola, Right Guard. I mean, those drivers would come out with 7 and 8 sponsors, and they had it in there because they thanked their sponsors, because that was airtime, and the value of that was exponentially more than if you just saw a car driving around the track. So the drivers were trained to share and talk about their sponsors before they talked about the action. And the television networks knew that if we're going to ask a driver something, you got to buffer 30 or 45 seconds, then they're going to answer your question. And so Hermie Sadler, Elliott Sadler, and Daryl, just all kinds of folks that I was dialed into. I was always kind of fascinated at just how business minded the drivers are. Well, I was sharing that story with my dad in the summer of No Worries, long before TNA, or months before TNA was kind of thought of. And then we just started kicking around, and then the development, hey man, we need to create a wrestler who is this young upstart, and he's real business minded, and he comes to the ring and he has on a racing jumpsuit. And then when he takes the jumpsuit off, his knee pads are sponsored, his boots are sponsored, his tights are sponsored, all the different patches. And he goes through the whole thing when goes to ask him about the match, and you do all this. So it was basically a parody, a takeoff on NASCAR, but as a wrestler. But he's a young upstart, and he loses matches, and he loses matches, and he loses matches. And one by one, the sponsors start dropping him and dropping him and dropping him and dropping him. And he ends up, oh my gosh, he's out of sponsors. And he goes, what are you talking about? I just signed the most lucrative deal in the world. And they're like, what? It's guaranteed to be on TV a lot during my matches. And all of a sudden, he starts taking all these bumps, and you see on the bottom of his feet, and it has to be red where he's on his back, and he's got this big sponsor, whatever it is. But the bottom of his boots were sponsored. So that was a character that me and Jarrett, I want to say we pitched this around to a couple of different folks, and tongue in cheek, I think my old man actually tried to pitch Glenn Gilberti, but I don't remember exactly, but I know me and my dad, we did talk about it, had fun with it, might have had some legs to it, but Connie, that's the NASCAR man kind of working title. We obviously couldn't use NASCAR, but I think we were going to call him the racing and wrestling guy or something like that, because he was a wrestler background, but a young guy that wanted to wrestle. So I don't know. Anyhow, where were we going, Conrad? Oh, yeah.
You're talking about sponsorships and how
Go ahead.
Just a lot of sponsors these days in WWE. I mean, they're sponsoring. We've got a beverage cart on the outside for Prime. We've got the dasher boards around the ring are sponsored. We've seen this. The ring skirts are sponsored. We've seen the canvas is sponsored. Now we've got the tables and the turnbuckles and now the ladder, but also the post show. And so they've fallen into this system where they're going to do a press conference after the pay-per-view. And a lot of times we do see the characters on the program do an in-character press conference. But when it comes to the executives, like when The Rock announced that WrestleMania was coming to New Orleans, he shared all the cards. I mean, it was a real press conference. There was no wrestling story. It was, here's everything that we're doing. And you've even heard, Triple H defend at some of these press conferences, the idea that they're saying this business and acknowledging when things are a work and blah, blah, blah. But when he's asked about Ron Killings and whether or not this was always the plan or was it a work, he didn't really give an answer. It was almost like, hey, enjoy the show, almost implying that this was the plan all along. And of course, R-Truth's kids took to social to say, nope. And late that night, Ron Killings even just tweeted the words, no work. But when one of his loving fans tweeted at him, he responded fabulously. He said, no, hashtag we want truth was seen, heard, felt, and understood. Believe me when I say this, I love every one of y'all to death. We made history together. So Ron Killings is acknowledging, no, this was the real plan. And we know that, I shouldn't say we know, we're led to believe and we assume that the deal came together in the last 72 hours prior to the pay-per-view. That's according to Mike Johnson at PW Insider. And I guess part of the deal was he's going to come back not as R-Truth, but as Ron Killings. So he's at least going to be building value for his brand post WWE. It's a big deal for him to be back, but it does make me wonder, like, the WWE this summer, Jeff, is promoting WWE Unreal, where they're allegedly going to show us what happens inside the writer's room. And they're going to show us, hey, what's real and what's not, what's planned and what's not. So if this same company is producing a program like that, why would we use the press conference as an opportunity to continue the story and not just tell the real truth? I get it's sponsored, and so now you kind of feel like you have to do it. But it feels like the press conference now, respectfully, might be a waste of time. Either we're going to talk about things the way they really are, or we're going to continue the story. But it just feels like Triple H, to me, in my opinion, it was a misstep. Because when he said, just enjoy the show, that's sort of dismissive at a press conference. And now you've got people who are looking at that sort of side-eyed like, hey, wait a minute. Because if he just would have said instead, Jeff, hey, no, we listen to you. You told us what you wanted and we're here to deliver. We want to over deliver. We're here to put smiles on people's faces. You wanted truth. We corrected our mistake. He's back. I'm glad that Ron Killings is back in WWE. He could have been the hero. And I feel like when NXT was first getting going and it was sort of Triple H's baby, that is the way he would have approached that. Is it just required when you're in the big seat in WWE to blur the lines? Because that felt like a Vince McMahonism of enjoy the show or whatever. What'd you make of that?
God,
You disagree?
I mean, this was the plan. What's amazing to me is that they've got Killing's son in on the work. I guess Nick Khan's now going to be a part of this because he's a part of the storyline. No, Conrad, the whole thing. I'm kidding, tongue in cheek. Very surprising in a lot of ways because man, oh man, you've hit that's why I was chuckling at you. You hit the nail on the head in that. As we often say, and we've already said it on here, and we're going to get into it as we get into the topic on the difference between R-Truth and Ron the Truth Killings. But authenticity, transparency, accountability, what a missed opportunity, I think, in so many ways, in that the whole enjoy the show to me screams one thing, that as opposed to trying to slide on through it and cover it up, I think it exposed even more the ego of, hey, I screwed up. But the reality is we're going back to however he got cut. It wasn't because Ron screwed up or was late or whatever it was. They were cutting him because of money, whether it was a little money or a lot of money, but they let him go over dollars and cents. It wasn't over behavior or none of that. It was strictly a financial decision, unless there is more to this that we don't know, Conrad, and there certainly could be. But all things appear that it's a financial decision is why they cut. And then did they think the people, the WWE universe, were just going to stand up and applaud? Yay, you got rid of Truth, a beloved character who has been a staple of the WWE. I'll say the comedy, the lightness. Like, he hasn't been in a heated angle or anything like that. The 24/7 and the bits and pieces and everything that goes with it. He's give. If there's one guy in this business that has never given, since he returned there, the any fan to be upset at, it's Ronnie. And you know, the kind of thought through all this, that for them to make the cut. Well, why did they make the cut? Was it financial, or was it, hey man, he's a Vince guy, we got to, you know, we're slowly weeding out? Like, what was the real reason? But I'll stay with, okay, so it's a financial thing, but then the backlash happened, and then they doubled down. You talk about doubling down. They doubled down on, hey, it's all part of the story, and Ronnie's kid blew that out of the water, which, Conrad, the whole thing is surprising, but man, oh man, and I'm as guilty can be throughout my career when I look back, and we've gone into that issues. But ego, to me, it's only ego that you don't say, hey man, we screwed up as a company and let him go. But we're listening, just what you said, we're listening to you fans, and we're going to bring you back. They're saying the opposite. It's a story, enjoy the show. But the real reality is Ari and company are going, okay, so where are we getting that money at? Who you guys going to cut now? Because that's the obvious. But I'm happy for Ronnie, because what a success story at this stage. And Ron, the Truth Killings, is the guy that I fell in love with as a talent back in the Memphis TV days when he was first getting on the scene. It's going to be so interesting. I hate to say this because it's going to come sooner rather than later, but we'll see. Maybe there's a collaborative effort, but because, you know, WME has the best music agents, or some of the best music agents in the world. So maybe they're.
We hope Jeff is still with us. His internet just froze up, but I'm still here, and we're talking about what happened this past weekend at Money in the Bank. Of course, post-match, we saw that press conference from Triple H, but we also saw Cody Rhodes join the desk, and I loved what he said. He said, you guys wanted our truth, and it's always our job, everybody here, Triple H, Nick Khan, to give you what you want. So thank you guys for letting us know. Thank you. I thought Cody handled that fabulously. And listen, there's a lot of these tough situations that, you know, you're in, and you're going to be in the firing squad in the line of fire at that presser, and you got to know how to answer. Hey, speaking of tough situations, here's someone that we hope we never have to deal with. If you own a handgun for self-defense, your storage likely fits into one of two frustrating categories. It's either locked away, meaning it's safe but out of reach in case of emergency, or it's unsecured, leaving it vulnerable to anyone. Well, Stopbox USA saw the problem and designed a groundbreaking solution called the Stopbox Pro. With the Stopbox Pro, you'll never have to choose between security and readiness. Its ingenious push-button locking system gives you fast, reliable access when every second matters, without the hassle of keys or reliance on batteries. It's 100% mechanical, so it works every time, no power needed. And with Stopbox USA, you can finally have both that security and readiness. Stopbox Pro's mechanical's keyless system allows for fast, secure access without the risk of fumbling for keys when every second counts. It's also battery free, so you never have to worry about your lock not working. All the Stopbox products are made here in the USA in their own facility. This ensures the highest quality when it leaves the product, or highest quality craftsmanship when the product leaves the warehouse, rather. Not only that, though, it also creates meaningful jobs for the American workers. I also want to mention and brag on this. Stopbox Pro is also TSA compliant. So you have to check it, obviously, but this is approved for airline travel. Man, Stopbox has thought of everything. And right now, for a limited time only, our listeners can get a crazy deal. Check this out. 10% off your entire order when you use our code MyWorld. And right now, Stopbox is also running a deal on their most popular bundle. They call it the 2-pack. It's going to save you over 30%, and it comes with free accessories and free shipping. That's 10% off and a big bundle discount when you use the code MyWorld at StopboxUSA.com. That's StopboxUSA.com. Use our promo code MyWorld and discover a better way to balance security and readiness with Stopbox. All right, the storms have passed and Jeff is back, and we are here to talk about Ron Killings. He is the man of the hour. We've been talking about Ron for a couple of weeks now, and we felt like with all the hoopla, he deserved to be our topic today. And I don't know that you even knew the origin story, but did you know when you first started talking with Ron Killings that Jackie Crockett was his sort of foray into the wrestling business, or how did you learn that?
Well, I want to say yes, but not near as deep as you shared with me, and then that doc that was done, and just kind of that whole story behind it. But Road Dogg was the first guy who in Memphis, because that's where they hooked up, and just kind of his charisma and everything that went with it, and his athletic background, and just kind of his journey. But man, the first time that I'd heard about him and then started having conversations with him, the thing that just jumped off the page, yes, the super athletic, but this sounds silly because the modern day fan doesn't look, they look at him as R-Truth. And I don't say strictly comedy, but yeah, pretty much modern day 24/7 champion. And I've never looked at him that way because his aura, his charisma, just the magnetic personality is something that you cannot be around Ronnie more than a couple of minutes and not go, okay, he's a box office attraction. And Brian teed it up for him and told me about him. But then when I met him, I'm like, yep, he's everything Road Dogg said he was and more.
Jeff's struggling with his internet today. We're going to do our best to get it back on track. But I know that when you were first looking to join or start TNA, I'm curious, like, how does he wind up on your radar? Is it from working with TNA adjacent promoters like Burt Prentice and Bill Behrens, or how does he come into the fold for you guys?
Yeah, and maybe I apologize, folks. We're having a hell of a spring storm, and yes, it's still spring. We don't have summer till June 20th something. Anyhow, but no, I just referenced Road Dogg. Conrad was the first one who really said, hey, Jeff, you got to see this guy, because they had connected in Memphis, and it was just his ability to connect with the audience just jumped off the page from the very, very beginning. And it was a Memphis connection through Road Dogg. And then as we're, cranking up and starting up, he was available, and he was one of the, Conrad, I'd say day one of TNA, he was, you'd have to put AJ up there, but AJ was more going to define in the early days the X division, not about weight limits, not about no limits. And everybody knows, we've gone through the story of, I wanted to get Scott Hall because Scott was wanting to work, and, Ken Shamrock, and we could go through a few more. But as far as a pillar, a foundation of the TNA from day one, Ronnie was there, and you can you can just kind of look back at the stories we told, and was the vision. I mean, and we've gotten into the stories off and on through the years, whether it was Russo or my dad or myself or anybody, the ebbs and flows of the creative process. Ronnie was always at the very top of the list to be one of our go-to guys. And it showed in kind of the results. But man, oh man, what a freaking talent he is.
You showed him and showcased him on the very first pay-per-view. I was there at the Von Braun Center in the middle of June 2002, we would see Hermie Sadler and Sterling Marlin come out. Of course, they're big time race car drivers, huge NASCAR stars. They do get big pops. And then here comes Krush. And he's going to say that NASCAR drivers aren't real athletes. His kind of athletes hit home runs and throw touchdown passes, and their kind drive cars. And of course, the Observer would say, great, a racial angle in 2002. But I thought this was pretty good. I enjoyed the promo. My uncle and I left the building that day saying, hey, this guy's going to be a big star. And a couple of weeks later, of course, we had the match that we had set up with that very first debut. It was Krush wrestling Hermie Sadler. They went 5 minutes and 5 seconds. Krush is going to get a win with his feet on the ropes. The decision is reversed after the match. It's a DQ. Fans were chanting, zip your pants up, because Crush's fly was down during the match. But either way, I mean, you've got a guy who has $1 million look, who's oozing charisma. He dresses like a star, and he's delivering. And now here he's asked, and what a tough ask this is. One of the first times we're going to see him in a wrestling match, he's wrestling a race car driver. It would have been really easy for this to go wrong for him, but he made it work. I mean, with the benefit of hindsight, Jeff, would you have debuted a new character against a race car driver like this? I mean, I know you're tight with both of these guys, and I'm not throwing off on Hermie at all, but I'm saying when you're trying to debut a new star to the audience, would it have made sense to have him eat up a more seasoned enhancement talent first so the fans understood what he was about, as opposed to throwing him right in with a race car driver? Because respectfully, Hermie didn't have the reps, and if it went sideways, Hermie just moves on and life is good. But with the pressure's on Truth here to deliver, right?
Well, you know, hindsight's 2020, so it's easy for me to say this now, but yes. I think this is a validation of how much confidence I had in Truth, to be honest. Yes. Yeah. In that Sterling Marlin was leading the points. He was the top dog. And look, let me back up just a little bit. Ron Killings is from Charlotte, North Carolina, literally the heartbeat, or the hub, if you will, of NASCAR.
Yes.
So he understood NASCAR inside and out. He had a relationship with Hermie, so there was a trust factor, not only with myself, but Hermie, and Hermie wanted to dig in. And look, Hermie and Sterling, they were all about getting publicity for the brand. They were personal friends, and they looked at it that way to try to get new eyeballs to a promotion getting off the ground. You know, in one essence, it feels like this was yesterday, and others like 5 lifetimes ago. But the confidence that we had in Ronnie, and you know, this is where the business has really, really changed through the years, in that I'll never forget having the different conversations, but these promos, I'll say, for the first couple of years with Ronnie, who is Ron Killings? Ron Killings is Ron the Truth Killings. These promos are something that, look, he's showbiz, he's entertainment, but he knew how to evoke emotion and didn't mind crossing the line or going right up to it and touching buttons and everything, because he knew how to, I'll say, electrify an audience. And so when you have a talent pitching you, not just some verbiage here and there, but who is Ron Killings? Well, Ron the Truth Killings is, I'm going to stand on this kind of platform and this kind of business and say these kind of things, because that is in essence, the character he wanted to develop. And I just think that I'm very curious to see in 2025 what because I don't think it's going to be a new version. I think this is going to be a 20 years later version, and I think it's going to be very exciting. But that's who Ronnie was. I mean, and look, him and Hermie, no 5-star classic, but when you go back and watch it, very entertaining, and the people were into it. And Ronnie played the role of a heel to a Huntsville, Alabama crowd and NASCAR country, if you will. It was very entertaining. He did a hell of a job here.
What's amazing too is he was with the WWF, and it just slipped right through their fingers. I don't know that a lot of our listeners know this, but even according to Cage Match, his first matches would have been an NWA Wildside that they have on record. But then he starts working in the WWE developmental Memphis Championship Wrestling before eventually getting called up. And he had matches that were first dark matches and then house shows. But even on Sunday Night Heat, he picked up a win in the year 2000 one over Haku. And he's actually with the company the summer that they're doing the invasion angle. He's a part of that, like that infamous Tacoma Monday Night Raw where everything changed. Well, he was working Rhino on the Sunday Night Heat taping, and I think that sort of flies under the radar of everybody. WWE had him under contract and just didn't see it. And the reader pages of the Observer, they just heaped praise on him. I read one here from David Jett, who says, when Krush first came to Memphis as a WWF developmental wrestler, he wrestled as a heel. He came to the ring rapping to his own music. He had a home recording set up and had been writing rap songs prior to his signing. The fans hated him with a passion from day one. He had good heel heat, and he was always able to steal the show, both in the ring and in promos. For the fans who hated rap, he even did a country song, which was so funny it started to turn him face, and it'll happen one day in TNA. He was so good in the ring and on the mic that the fans ended up turning him face. I knew he'd be a big star in the WWF following the same pattern. Well, they missed the first part of the successful formula. The idea they missed out on Krush always boggled the mind. And Dave Meltzer, even reviewing a match here early in TNA, says the WWF missed the ball on Lynn and Krush. Maybe Lynn couldn't have been a top guy, but he makes everyone look better. Did everyone know right away, boy, the WWF bungled this one?
Brian more or less said, hey, Jeff, he said, it's the system has screwed up. How in the hell they let this guy go? Politics and change. And you pointed out, I don't know if you meant to point it out, but the influx of all the WCW talent with the invasion.
Yeah.
You talk about a guy getting lost in the shuffle, and yes. I get it. I think Jim Ross would tell you today, yep, Ronnie was one I missed. But kind of rightly so, because he had, Jesus, how many WCW talent became available overnight? 50, 60, 70? I don't know. Maybe more than that. So that was the product. And look, Ronnie, the reality was he'd been in the business 2 years, 3 years. He maybe wasn't quite ready for that. But Road Dogg pitching him to me, he's like, Jeff, and I'm like, once I saw him, like, you ain't got to sell me on it. Yeah, that just the timing. And look, this is kind of certainly a life lesson for an upcoming talent. Timing is so important when the door opens for you and when it closes for you. Just stick to the grind. Cream always rises to the top.
So he debuts as Krush. Of course, that's in June. By July, as we head into August, he's going to change his name to The Truth. And maybe some of this was because Paul Pierce was on fire with the Boston Celtics at the time, and his nickname was The Truth. But either way, you guys dabble with some racial angles here. Again, this is when you guys are running largely the Asylum. So you're in deep in the Bible Belt. You're in the heart of Dixie in Nashville, Tennessee. And you're going to have an angle with Ron Killings and Monty Brown. And, you know, Ron Killings is going to talk about in his racial diatribe that they, the white people, had been holding him back. And Monty Brown comes out and says, oh, you've got a bad attitude. And Truth calls him an Uncle Tom. And I think nowadays we know we're not going to do these sort of angles. But in 2002, do you remember anybody raising their hand and saying, I don't know if we should do this? Was it just a different time, or was there a discussion about it even back then?
Well, if I remember correctly, this is Ronnie, look, man, we got to be real. And look, he wasn't the first talent, wasn't the last talent, but, you know, collectively as a group, as we're talking all this, you know, they can be interpreted as, because he not bitter, not upset, but he, in his mind, was some ways, like any talent, was a little bit reeling that WWE let him go.
Yeah.
Like, you know, all this. So they holding me down.
Okay.
Hey, this is WWE. And I look at him and I go, Ronnie, now come on. You know, the world isn't going to interpret it, whether you believe that or not. And I'm not saying it's true or not true, but come on. But Ronnie was kind of trying to blur the lines and no, WWE. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So there was a little bit of that, Conrad, but I knew that, okay, we're kind of playing with a couple of different stories here. But with Monty there, and Monty, coming out and being quote unquote the company man, the TNA company man, it made for some good television. And those two guys going back and forth. And Conrad, I know, we love our wrestling, but as Conrad would say, go out of your way if you want to watch two charismatic guys go at each other on the mic, because this is one of those deals in the Asylum days that, whether it was, I can just feel it at about 10 o'clock on this Wednesday night. So the show was from 7 to 9 when me and maybe Don West and Mike Tenay are talking about going through the show, what was good, what was bad. Everybody would unanimously say, my God, Monty Brown and Ron the Truth, did they tear the house down? Because their realism, authenticity, their intensity was so freaking good, man. Really, really good.
I don't know how we couldn't all just love what Ron has done. Let's talk about where we start to move him up a little bit. We've got him wrestling for the title fairly quickly against Ken Shamrock. Ricky Steamboat has been involved here. And of course, Killings is going to mention that, hey, they made you the Intercontinental Champion. That's a second class and second tier belt. You should have been the world champion. They didn't give you that opportunity. So we're trying to talk about that WWF title opportunity as part of the they.
Yep.
But we are going to have Ken Shamrock working with Truth. Ultimately, Shamrock is not going to be dropping the title. Why, as we think about, when we're talking about having him challenged to be the first Black NWA champion in history, and I know that technically people would debate, well, the NWA belt is technically the WCW belt, whatever. When you're thinking about your early stable of wrestlers, Ken Shamrock, AJ Styles, Ron Killings, Scott Hall, I mean, you've got a lot of talent, a lot of name. Why did you think Shamrock and Killings? Was everybody just impressed with what they saw with Ron and thought, hey, it makes sense to do the title pitch? Or is there something else? Because I'm just curious, because you do have so many other former WWF, WCW names that were established, which would make you think, well, they're probably going to do that. Is this the effective use of the established name? You try to take a guy like Shamrock, who does have that television name value, and rub him up against Killings in the hopes that Killings can level up?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're talking about August.
August of 2002 is when Ron wins the belt from Shamrock in 9 minutes and 18 seconds.
So if we go back in time, around July, mid-July, end of July is when we got the call that Health South was pulling out the funding.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is so much going on. One thing was for certain, Truth was great, was going to get better, was over. And I say this with all due respect. He was a drive and economical, like a lot of other folks that were in a driving area. And that could go from, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 hours within Nashville. Shamrock was San Diego. He was at a different stage in his life. We negotiated, one deal. And, when you ask a guy to take a pay cut, there's some guys that will, yep, you can do that. Then there's other guys that you're a lot better off going in and shaking their hands and say, hey, Kenny, this has not turned out the way we thought it was going to. And so we're going to choose to kind of go in a different way, because our contracts nothing was guaranteed, but we did have a rate. And it was just a stage that, hey, Kenny, because of, at this time, MMA was in a different spot, obviously coming off the hills. We've gone into that, founding the company, and Kenny was, he had MMA appeal. He had, we'll call it WWF appeal, looked great. And could really put on a hell of a believable match, if you will. And we knew we were going to have our high flyers, and the different styles. But Kenny was going to be point on our world heavyweight title picture. Well, financing changed, the world got turned upside down, and so we said, all right, we got to look at different options. And my father, myself, others, it just came real apparent. All right, let's go this route and really pour the gas on this guy. And so Ronnie was, all signs pointed toward him. And so that's how the matchup originally came to be.
There's a discussion in the Observer that the content of some of the Ron Killings promos became a hot button issue between your dad and Vince Russo. I guess there was something that was written where Russo wanted Killings to refer to Six Pac and Road Dogg and Scott Hall as three honkies. And I guess for whatever reason, your dad said, I don't know if we want to do that. And I guess it sort of came to a head because Russo was writing some pretty controversial, sharp tongue stuff. And your dad wanted to scale it back a little bit. Is that fair to say?
Well, look, Russo really hot off the heels of the Attitude Era. And then the Ron Killings talent mindset was, and I'll say this, it was an area that Ronnie wanted to kind of control its narrative, and that he really believed in. I just said it, they is not the white folk, they is WWE. Vince wanted to double down and just blow that line out of the water and not keep it up in the air and go the honky route and go this. And that was where the philosophical headbutting, God almighty, you can tell it started from day one, in that Vince wanted to blow that crossing the line out of the water, whereas my father wanted to go right up to that line, and Killings did too. Killings was, like, we don't need to go there, but there's a difference between they and honky. And therein lies the creative differences.
It's even written as we get to like October of 2002 that Russo is telling people that he's confident that when the new owners come in, they're going to put him in charge of creative. Of course, this is that Health South situation we were talking about before. And it's written here, no matter how well received Jarrett's stuff may be compared with Russo, the bottom line is, as mentioned before, Russo has a lot more impressive newspaper clippings when he made the switch in 99. And people who don't know wrestling will probably think they lucked into something with him. Russo's standing amongst his own clique is strong, but it's pretty clear that Waltman, Henning, and Killings are not in that group. Do you think that Truth and Russo were at odds too? It wasn't just your dad. Russo was aligned with your dad and sort of being maybe not totally on board with Russo.
Almost by us doing the pod, when you get into exactly who Ron is, Ron didn't have a Russo side or a Jerry Jarrett side, and he had relationships with both of them. Ron believed in his character because his character was really playing an extension of who he was. And so he liked to kind of stay in his lane. And so he, again, his good naturedness and getting along with everybody really shined through. So I wouldn't call him a Jerry Jarrett guy, although they had a great relationship. And I know him and Russo had a good relationship. So he didn't play sides.
Let's talk a little bit about what's next. We're going to see Vince Russo come back on camera about a month after we had all that discussion about him being at odds maybe. But it's November 20th, and there'll be a title match on this show that's pretty well received, with you winning the NWA title from Ron Killings. And this happens after a big fight feel. You see Jeremy Borash doing the introductions. It's almost a boxing style ring introduction. Fans are really with it. Meltzer would even say, you guys had a hell of a match, 3.5 stars. You went 17 minutes and 37 seconds. Ultimately, the finish happens when Mr. Wrestling number 3 comes down in a hood and clocks Killings with a guitar. It's revealed that Mr. Wrestling number 3 is actually Vince Russo. I don't know about that piece of creative. However, I do want to hear, this is one of your first times having a high profile match with Ron Killings. You're going to take the NWA title off of him. What was your chemistry like? What was your in-ring experience like with Ron Killings?
We clicked. I think he'd say the same thing, because we would always, even through the years, laughed and cut up. But and I got to give a shout out to TD Tadal. That was his buddy that would come over with him from Charlotte. But Ronnie always came with his game face on. In that's what I'm saying. People today don't realize, and I think some do, but when Ronnie was given a platform to do whether it's heel or babyface, but a serious money drawing promo and tell a story, he ranks right up there at the very, very top of it. And you can't teach that. You can't coach that. Now you can produce it and get little ebbs and flows and a little nuances here and there, but in his DNA, he is a hell of a performer. But as far as in ring, Ronnie at this point, I don't know, been around the business 3, 4, 5 years. He had every skill set needed. It was what a pleasure it was, because we would lay things out and, he would, hey, why don't we do this? We would collaborate on all of it. And then he's a guy like an AJ, like all the great talents. He just makes everything that much better. But, and I've said this, guys with super athletic ability, they can take a match from good to great, and they can take an average match or something that has the potential, even if it's down to a little micro high spot. An athletic guy can cover up for it, and most of the time the audience doesn't have a clue. But Ronnie's one of those guys. I thought our chemistry was always really, really good, snug. Neither one of us minded. We knew it ain't ballet, so we would lay everything in, and the result was usually pretty damn good stuff.
It's funny because, you guys had been in the ring before in tag matches and 6-man tags and things like that. But the first time y'all are in the ring together, one-on-one, it's for the NWA title. You run it back the next week and do a rematch. I like you guys together in the ring. But it does feel like once they take the title off of him, they pivot a little bit. He's no longer in the title picture. Is there more to it than that? Because I know from a fan perspective, fans these days, when they see a guy get pushed and then they take the belt off of him a few months later, it's like, oh, he's getting buried. I think that's overblown. But I do wonder, when we've heard the speculation that there were some problems creatively behind the scenes where maybe he really wasn't getting along with Russo, and you've said, hey, maybe that's true, maybe it's not. When you beat him for the title, we get the rematch, and then it does feel like, I don't know. I liked him being the face of TNA, is the only way I know to say it. It felt new. It felt different.
Yep.
And was the Russo and the backstage stuff a motivation to, hey, I'm tired of dealing with this conversation with my dad and Vince. Let's just do something else. We'll find something else and we'll come back to it. Because you're always big on saying here on the program, creative is subjective. What really happened after the belt comes off Ron?
I think more than anything, and the timing, I believe it's right here, because I think Russo coming back in the Mr. Wrestling 3 was a takeoff on quote unquote pro wrestling versus sports entertainment. So the SEX angle, sports entertainment extreme. This is where that launched. And for the lack of a better word, Conrad helped me out here, but I think it's not like we were down on Ronnie or down on the story, is that we were new storylines, and this became pro wrestling versus sports entertainment extreme was the overriding angle. And this is where we launched 3 Live Crew, because once that launched, or not long after it, those 3 guys, legit, really, really tight, good buddies, they came with an idea that to me, it jumped off the page, a black guy, a white guy, a Hispanic guy that could have a match. They all 3 could have singles. They could have tags. I thought the marketability of the 3 Live Crew jumped off the page. So it was, hey, let's not let Ronnie just fall out of the title picture and then get lost in the shuffle. Let's pivot him from here to here, because the world title picture is going to move on into the sports entertainment versus pro wrestling, storyline, if you will.
Need to run a timeout now to brag about Blue Chew. Blue Chew Max has arrived, and it combines the active ingredients of both Viagra and Cialis into one chewable. It's a combo that acts fast and lasts, and now you can be ready whenever she or he needs it. Get your first month of Blue Chew free, too. Great sex is just a few clicks away. Go sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part is it's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. So make your life easier by getting harder and discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try your first month of Blue Chew free when you use the promo code MyWorld. Just pay the $5 shipping. That's promo code MyWorld. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. I do want to at least read some of what's in the Observer here, because I think this is interesting, especially with the benefit of hindsight. Jarrett is orchestrating it and wants everyone to do interviews saying what they think. So the angle is built around real feelings. Russo believed most of what he said in his speech, where he said he thinks TNA sucks and that he came up with the name and it was supposed to mean tits and ass, and that WWE sucks and that wrestling was dying before he got power and it's dying again. And now he's back to save it. Yep, he's deluded enough that he really believes this. It's funny because the company is still claiming that Russo has no involvement in creative, and at this point, there's no way anyone could feel saying that isn't an insult to their intelligence. Russo on a radio show this weekend contradicted that, but claimed he had no influence over anything except his own angle. And when the show went off the air with a cliffhanger as to whether Jarrett would join Russo in the building, Jarrett put his belt down on the mat and dared Russo to get it. As Russo went in for the ring to grab it, Killings jumped him. It gets funnier. Think about this one. Nobody knows this, but they're figuring out it'll get reported and everyone will know. Killings came back in the dressing room screaming that Russo was shooting on him by punching him for real in the ring. He looked to be throwing these windmill blows that were connecting because he's not a trained worker. There was also a plan of bringing back a lot of old timers to say they hate what Russo did in order to build business for the program. So let's talk about that. This whole Russo was punching me for real. Is that real? He's not trained and they were live rounds? Or did you guys do that and stage the thing afterwards, hoping that, you know, we can work the boys and that'll get to the sheets and then everybody will think it's a shoot, brother? What really happened with Russo and Killings here?
And we're really getting granular, if you will.
Yes.
I mean, so my recollection, I'll be straight up. Here's what I believe. And this is where, was that from the Observer?
Yes.
Yeah. And this is where, God bless him, it feels so much of, hey, I'm going to take a good guess and go down this road because I think the wrestling business is only done a lot of times for the boys. And I get where it comes from. What I believe, Conrad, and I could be totally wrong, but when it went off the air, we kept cameras rolling because I don't think it was from the very start. No, it could have been from the very start because we weren't planning on that. But when we made the move to Nashville full time, Bert Prentice had an hour television show on Saturday mornings that Bert had said, hey, you guys, you know, you're taking over kind of my building, or not taking it over. You're going to be running every Wednesday. I run out here once a month on Saturdays. It's going to kind of be hard for me. I'll go to work for y'all while you're here and this. So I think we shot that content for Explosion to continue the SEX storyline and where Ron fit in, and Russo, correct, was not a trained worker. And I will be the first to tell you, me and many others said Vince, and Vince even in his mind would say, I don't want to throw phony punches. And I said, then hell, don't hit him in the face. Don't hit him in the neck. Damn sure don't hit him in the balls, but unload on them. And so he probably threw some live rounds on Ronnie, and Ronnie kept it going and stayed in the game mindset, and the cameras rolled, and we were probably recording this. And so we made a clip to promote the following Wednesday on Explosion, and Ronnie just was ad-libbing, knowing that audio would probably never get used. But what happens? some of the quote unquote smart talent, not the smart marks, the talent backstage that think they're smart to the business, but really don't have a clue. They're going to report on it as if, oh my God, Ronnie just lit Russo's ass up. And I think this and that. But really, I think it was an explosion segment, Ronnie, Conrad. That's would be my gut on why that happened, because the other stuff seems kind of silly, doesn't it, Conrad? Kind of silly.
I do want to ask about this. It does feel like after this, you're going to pivot for a bit, and Truth's title run is cut down. Before long, we're going to put Truth as a part of a group, as a tag team wrestler with Conan and BG James. We're going to call him 3 Live Crew. He's going to stay there for a few years, and I love that. You're talking about 3 of the most charismatic people in the history of the industry. And this group, I think, if it was a WWF group, would be hugely celebrated. I mean, I think this would be fun as a photo opportunity at a convention someday, that sort of thing. Because, man, I don't know. I just really liked their group. I liked the vibe of it. And in this process, Truth becomes 100% babyface. Now, you'd been presenting him as a heel, but fans are with him. And he manages to go on a 3 Live Crew approved singles run in 2004. And believe it or not, he beats AJ Styles for the NWA title. That's his second and final NWA title reign. It lasts about 2 weeks before he drops the belt back to you again. Is this the era where you just couldn't afford to put talent under a long-term contract, so it made sense to keep the belt on you? Or why didn't we get a longer run with Truth on top?
I think, God, Conrad, I just would have to kind of look at a full calendar, but I think I won it back in a King of the Mountain match, and we were moving to Orlando, and I believe we were lining ourselves up for Fox Sports Net.
It was a King of the Mountain match. It was June 2nd, 2004 at the fairgrounds. It was you in there with AJ Styles, Chris Harris, Raven, and Ron Killings. Ron's the champ, so he's going to lose his title belt here in a King of the Mountain match, multi-man with all these other folks. And it was actually the 100th pay-per-view for NWA Total Nonstop Action.
I think we were transitioning to Orlando not long after this.
Yes.
Lining up for Fox Sports Net. And the creative decision was, when we come on the air, if you will, episode 1 of Impact on Fox Sports Net, is that I was going to be a heel. Me was going to be a champion to set up the storytelling. And when you go back and really look at what we were just talking about early in the pod, that, you know, NWA TNA episode 1 is really, in so many ways, the first chapter of the book, or almost the preface, because we had Steamboat and Fargo and all that. We had to give some backstory and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, as an overarching story, we had to give the foundation. That's why we wanted NWA, because it had all the roots from 1905. So anyway, storytelling. So episode 1, and then that got us, I think you just said, up to 100. And so then, you know, when you go to Orlando, this is how we looked at it. That's what I'm trying to give you the context. Go to Orlando, and now we're going to be, you know, a brand new chapter. It's not a new book, but a brand new chapter. And that was kind of the set point. My gut tells me is that so AJ and Ronnie, I guess you could say the old transition title, maybe, but Ronnie, well, let me say this, 3 Live Crew, and everything's relative, but man, you talk about really connecting with the Asylum audience in so many ways. Those guys, they were stars. And, you know, Conan and he was involved obviously in the World X Cup as the Lucha team, and Brian from the DX days, and Truth with his charisma, put them together. They were really, they were an integral part of those Asylum days. And it just worked on so many levels.
We should mention, eventually Billy Gunn shows up, and at first he's going to be the New Age Outlaw. We'll find out he can't use that, so we call him the Outlaw. There is eventually going to be a meeting of the minds, and 3 Live Crew becomes 4 Live Crew. That drives a wedge, and now we get Kip James and Brian James together, and then Truth and Conan on the other side of things. Eventually, Conan creates LAX, and we know the James Gang is now a tag team. So that leaves Truth sort of on his own, and he's going to be a tag team wrestler, maybe most famously tagging with Adam Pac-Man Jones. We don't spend a lot of time talking about Pac-Man, but I mean, Ron really started with you working with Hermie Sadler, and then later, when there's an opportunity to work with a different kind of athlete, not a NASCAR driver, but a football player, Pac-Man's the guy. How does the Truth and Pac-Man tag team come to be?
Oh man, you're kind of laying it out there. I'm chuckling because when you're in a creative room and the obviously Pac-Man Jones, and I think he just had another rough weekend, Conrad. I don't know if you saw that headline, but there's probably a whole episode we can do on Pac it one day, or maybe the celebrity involvement in the TNA days would be up there, and Pac maybe the lead story. But that whole thing and not being able to play in NFL for a year and having the ability, and yes, he's going to come, quote unquote, at first wrestle for us, and then things started from a Titans perspective, and I had to go down and meet face to face. Man, what a whole that was still some craziness when I really think through all that. Crazy time in my life for damn sure, personally and professionally. But universally in the creative room is okay. We've got to create a situation where we have a safety valve and another safety valve, and we've got to think through this and who can relate to our audience, who can be the glue. I mean, it was so unanimous. Hey, we're going to put Truth and Pac together. And you really think about, Conrad, and we'll kind of hypothetically, what if? Can you imagine? Because I think I've said this before, as far as getting a guy in the ring, and I was with Pac the first time he ever stepped foot in a wrestling ring, and I worked out with him a half hour, maybe. I've never seen anything like it. I have never seen anything like his ability to catch on. And he grew up in Atlanta and he watched it and that kind of stuff. But as far as having natural ability to do this, I know D'Angelo Hawkins had a hell of a match and he did training for it. But man, Pac, the what if Pac and Ronnie could have developed as a tag team, it would have been a lot of fun to watch. I'll say this. But Ronnie being paired with him, Ronnie he could do it all. He could do Pac's talking. He could do his working. He could do literally. He would be the glue and damn sure not get lost in it. Matter of fact, lead the way, which Pac needed.
Let's talk a little bit about the song. Towards the end of his TNA run, he debuts new entrance music. What's Up? It's his original rap song that becomes his entrance music. He even uses it during his entire second WWE run because, he was allowed to bring it with him. That's kind of a big deal. And I know once upon a time, years prior to this, when he was first getting hot with you guys back in '02, he somehow actually got some of his rap songs on the Nashville Urban Station. Is that something that you or Dixie had helped make happen for him? And when and why did you guys decide to lean into the rap stuff and actually get it on local stations? Because that feels like a big deal.
Hey, and I don't know if we can get rights to this, but Silva, maybe you could find it. But there is a picture. I'm trying to think of, a very, very famous rapper of Truth and oh my gosh. Anyway,
Tupac back in the day.
Was it Tupac?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. But look, and I can probably say that I know Jerry Lawler. You'll know where I'm going with this, but there's a couple of different guys that throughout my career, I have witnessed that wrestling is, and they're great at it, superstars at it, larger than life personalities. But in a lot of ways, the business probably came too easy to them, and their real aspiration was something else. I think Lawler, if he could do it all over again and be a pop star, he'd have done it. I think Ronnie, if he had to do life all over again and say, hey, man, you can tour the world being a rap artist, I think he'd have said, sign me up. That is his first true love. And he had no, when I went back in 2019, 2020, I was working with Ronnie, and there was an artist in South Africa. There was a couple of different ideas. I think Ronnie, his true love is the music business. And so from day one, he's coming, and he's always got, God, this is really dating him. Hey man, here's my new song. Here's my new song. Here's my new song. All kind of different things. I was amazed when he went to WWE. There he is. Look how young Ronnie looks with the white in his hair with Tupac. But I mean, that was one of his, I'll call it, childhood idols. I mean, Ronnie through and through. Him and Tupac just grinning from ear to ear. But he always loved his music. And when he went to WWE and got What's Up, and then they stuck with it, that is it's certainly one of his top 5 accomplishments in his entire career, that his theme music is done by him and is stuck. And, I'm sure he had to sign some type of rights over. I don't know what the business deal is, but he loves his music, man. He absolutely. So that's where the businessman in me, Conrad, this next go around, and where Ron the Truth Killing goes, my gut tells me music's going to be the lead.
Well, he just got a new single out. I encourage everybody to check it out. It came out like 2 weeks ago, and it's got a red cowboy boot on the cover. So, it's going to be fun. You mentioned a minute ago, and I know, we're sort of tongue in cheek about saying, hey, Tupac was a childhood favorite of his. Tupac's only like 7 months older, but certainly he had a passion, he being Truth, for music and hip hop. So when he gets hot with Digital Underground and then became a megastar as a single rap artist, a solo artist, I'm sure that was something that appealed to him. And as a reminder, old Ron Killings had some fun in TNA. When he's teaming with Pac-Man Jones, they beat Kurt Angle and Sting for the tag titles. And then they wrestled Team 3D, the former Dudley Boys. And then they wrestled Elix Skipper and Senshi, who we know is low key today. I mean, there's so much fun stuff that happened here in this run, but unfortunately, it came to a less than awesome end. But it is interesting to note that I think one of his last matches in the company is teaming with what would have been Pac-Man Jones, but by Bound for Glory, the football team had already said, nope, that's enough. So we see Xavier Woods, who back then was Rashid Lucius Creed before he became Consequences Creed. And he's teaming against AJ Styles and Tomko. It really is a who's who. A couple of days later, rather, it's Chris Harris, Rhino, and Ron Killings on one side against Triple X on the other. But that's when we see Ron start to try his hand in Puerto Rico and in AAA. And eventually he signs with WWE. So 2007, go ahead.
Here's what's, and this kind of sums up Ronnie's last, I don't know, maybe it just sums up in a lot of ways. And I'm going to screw the timing of all this, but at first the Tennessee Titans had kind of, either they weren't having their eye on the ball or didn't take us serious or didn't take Pac serious or whatever the case may be, but they said, they didn't say anything. So we creatively decided, okay, coming in and this and that, we're going to make them tag champs. Well, Conrad, once he became tag champs, I believe that's when I got the call. Well, and I just saw Warwick Robinson, the attorney, anyway, at Delta Club. But anyway, I got the call and I had to go down and go in the Tennessee Titans offices and sit down and had to say, hey, man, I promise you, the last thing we want to happen is Pac to get hurt. And they're like, well, so I had to sell them just on that to let him, because we're in this story. So Conrad, we had to make a deal, and here's our tag champ. He's going to be the tag champ, but guess what? He'll have no physical activity. So Conrad, when you say Sting and Kurt and 3D and all that, I'm pretty sure we had to work tag matches where Truth had to do not 90%, but 100% of their side of work, because Pac really couldn't do anything. So That is how good Ron the Truth Killings is. So I say that to just shine a light on Ronnie really can do, and he proved it, his work and his partner's work.
Hey, listen, guys, a lot of uncertainty in our financial world these days. One thing I'm pretty certain of, your house is worth more than what you paid for it. So if your money's been tight, hey, the solution you've been looking for has been hiding in your house. It wasn't in your junk drawer. It wasn't in your basement. It wasn't in your attic. It's in the equity in your house. According to the Zillow Home Index, the value of your home is still going up year over year, which means you're probably sitting on a boatload of untapped equity. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe you're one of those guys who got one of those great COVID rates way back when, and you've been hanging on to that. Well, if you've been struggling with your credit card debt, man, what are you waiting for? It's up to you how you pay it back. Once you go into debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. And I really encourage you to take a look at this. What I really think is most important is how much money's coming in and how much money's going out every month. And if I can have more money at the end of the month, instead of having more month at the end of the money, well, sign me up. That's exactly what we helped Andrew do in Tennessee. He had some credit card debt he needed to pay off, and he wanted to knock out getting a new roof and some new floors. What are some things around your house you'd like to do? Is there something you said once upon a time, hey, one day I'd like to, hey, someday we want to? We can make someday today and do it with cheaper monthly payments. You see, my man Andrew, instead of taking out new debt to do those upgrades, he just came to SaveWithConrad.com. He used the equity that he's built up in his home over the years. We hooked him up with a cash out refinance. We call it a debt consolidation because we knocked out some of his debt and saved him over $400 a month. Yeah, and he's still got a new roof and new floors. So let me recap. We got rid of all his credit card debt. We got him a new roof. We got him the new floors. He skipped 2 house payments, and his payments went down. Yeah, over $400 a month. Now, he didn't just save $400 one time. He's going to save that each and every month. We're talking $5,000 a year he'll save that otherwise he would have worked for that money, paid taxes on it, and then just given it away. But if you know you can get a better rate than what you've got on your credit cards, and you know you can get a greater tax deduction because the interest you pay on your mortgage is tax deductible, but the interest you pay on your credit cards is not. And you can skip your next 2 house payments, which means no payments in July or August. You're done until September. How about a summer vacation from house payments? We can do it for you right now at SaveWithConrad.com. Let my team run the numbers. We want to hear from you. Do you want a pool? Do you want to put in a home theater? Do you need a new kitchen? Do you need a new tile shower? What are you looking for to upgrade your house? What would that one thing be? Let's take care of that and get it to you with cheaper monthly payments because we knocked out all your credit card debt. And did I mention when you work with the team at SaveWithConrad.com, you also get our year 3 guarantee. You see, experts all seem to agree that interest rates are going to improve over the next couple of years. And when that happens, you're going to be primed. Here's what I mean. I don't want you to wait until the rates fall to start saving money. What that says differently as, I'm just going to keep overpaying for the foreseeable future and just hope something gets better. That's not the best plan. The best plan is to get the best deal for your family today and give yourself the peace of mind of knowing you're not wasting money later. And that's exactly what our year 3 guarantee does. We're going to go ahead and start saving you money today with the rates where they are. And if the rates improve over the next 3 years, we'll refinance you again with no new lender fees. So you get to lock in a much cheaper monthly payment right now. But then when the rates improve, call your boy. I want to be your mortgage advisor for life. And I mean that. You see, at SaveWithConrad.com, we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. I don't want you to feel ashamed or concerned about me seeing that you've had struggles. Hell, who hasn't? I've seen over 100,000 credit reports in my career. I've seen it all, and I know how to fix it. I know how to get you there. So I just want to hear from you. What are your goals, and how can I help? I'm going to get to work at SaveWithConrad.com. You're going to love working with my team. You might even wind up talking to my dad. My dad's part of the team. Come be a part of the family with your family at SaveWithConrad.com and find out how much money you can save. Andrew, who listens to this podcast, got rid of his credit card debt, got a new roof, got some new floors, and saved $400 a month. You can be our next success story. You just need to go right now to SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com, or shoot me an email. It's Conrad@SaveWithConrad.com. Well, we've had a lot of fun talking about Ron Killings, but now we've got to talk about the end of his TNA run. There is a less than awesome exit to TNA. What do you recall about Ron Killings and his time in TNA coming to a close?
If I wouldn't have read the research, I would have totally forgot all this, because I don't even know how he got hurt, but I know he got hurt, and then the injury, and then the medical payments, and I think it turned ugly between him and Terry and Taylor. But I didn't even really recall all that. And what year was that in?
2007 is when he's going to finish up.
Yeah.
And I guess there was an email that he sent to TNA on July 7th, 2007, 07.
Wow.
And it was going to Terry Taylor. Now, this was all made public through a lawsuit that Conan filed, I guess, about discrimination in TNA. And there were some financial issues that Ron brought up in the email, where I guess there were some hurt feelings about the money that he was paid and the fact that he got injured in a TNA ring. And now TNA was trying to recover some of those medical costs from his pay. And basically, he claims, according to the email, if I'm talking about race, it's because someone there is always treating me like an N-word. And someone, and you know who, called me the N-word in front of everybody. And that same person told me and you and everybody that he is a racist. So why I have to think that TNA treats me like an N-word, right? My financial situation is a result of the mentality of the people who I was working for, and not a result of choices I made, Terry. Please don't call P.S. Please don't call me on my cell phone because it's roaming in Mexico, and I have no money to pay my phone bill because TNA didn't send me my check. And I think I'll stay in Mexico more time because they want me to stay here and help me like nobody else has done in the last 5 years. And thanks to them, I have money in my pocket now with no politics. I love that he sent this email, and I guess that was the end of him in TNA. He obviously had a great deal of success in WWE. He goes back in 2008, the same week that they're transitioning to high definition.
God.
So on this run, Ron Killings has been with the WWE as long as they've had high def. Bravo to Ron. But man, it was an ugly exit, and you and I haven't spent a ton of time talking about this, but we've heard this or story similar to this before, Jeff, where talent gets injured and maybe there's a problem chasing down some payment for medical bills. Was that always an issue with Panda? What can you tell us about that, if anything?
And look, I don't want this to come out because I've said it multiple times. Very grateful for Bob Carter and all the contributions and the entire Carter family and Panda. But when you drill it right down to it, the unfortunate part of that relationship from the beginning, and I think at the very core, look, my dad is going their separate ways, and the ugliness that didn't need to be ugly, and there's kind of multiple people all the way through it, but it always, to me, and look, hindsight's 2020, it always circles back to, and this is where in a lot of ways I'm very grateful that in the business should be very, very grateful, and a lot of folks in that, the Khan family's in multiple businesses, but they are a sports franchise owner, Fulham and Jags. And so they understand kind of that world, that if you're going to get injured, I'll say playing on the franchise's stop clock, well, then the bill's got to be paid. Whereas the Carters, I'm not saying by any stretch bad folks, but their mindset was, hey guys, these are 1099. If a plumber gets, I don't want to make it sound so distasteful, but they just looked at talent as 1099 guys. And if 1099 guys get hurt on the job, they're not responsible. And no matter how many conversations me, and not just me, many others tried to have, they just didn't look at medical bills the way, candidly, they should have, but that was running, as you have said, running a small business by the bootstraps and trying to build it month after month after month after month after month and getting it to profitability and getting this and getting that. At the end of the day, they were still energy folks running an entertainment business, and therein lies the clash. And so, an unfortunate situation, but that really is the reality. is that they didn't understand the wrestling business as being truly an entertainment business, in that fact that, hey man, it's TNA Entertainment's ring, and therefore you got the liability. They just didn't view it that way.
I guess we can't really blame Ron for jumping at the chance to go back to WWE.
Hell,
you and I have spent a lot of time on this program through the years talking about sort of the one that got away. And we always circle back to Monty Brown, who, by the way, is making his first ever convention appearance July 11th and 12th at StarCast. Go pick up your bracelets right now, STARRCAST.com. We're going to have a who's who of AEW and legends there. But Monty Brown has never done an appearance like this. And thanks to a little help from our friends, Lance Hoyt, we have got the one and only Monty Brown at StarCast, Texas. Be sure to pick up your bracelets at starcast.com. Some of those meet and greets go on sale this Friday, by the way. So if you've been looking to see where you can find who to meet who and all that jazz, look no further than STARRCAST.com. But we always say, man, Monty's kind of the one that got away. With the benefit of hindsight, I know that we gave Ron 2 very brief NWA title runs, but I can't help but wonder, what if? What if we had continued the version of Ron Killings that we first saw on that first episode of TNA, the truth version?
Yep.
If he would have kept that truth thing going the entire time, I got to think his TNA career and maybe his wrestling career looks a lot differently. Now, that being said, I'm not knocking truth. I mean, we saw he was given the comedic stuff. He crushed it. He was given the 3 Live Crew stuff. He crushed it. The stuff with Pac-Man. We just went through all the great matches. He's done everything that's ever been asked of him and made it work. And we've also said sometimes, Jeff, that can actually hurt you. If you're a one-trick pony, everybody's got to sort of come to your level and work to make you look good. But if you can do it all, man, you might accidentally become a Mr. Perfect sort of character who you're going to make everybody else look good. And I know that Ron has made the most of, I think JR calls the phrase, maximizing your minutes. He's maximized his minutes.
Yes.
I really do believe he did that. But I wonder from your perspective, if Ron would have been able and afforded the opportunity to do that truth character from day one and keep that energy the entire run of TNA, how different does his career look?
Yeah, and that the pivot that I'll say, as the dominoes fall, in that timing's everything and the opportunities are there, but you just never know. When I look back on it, if we would have had the luxury, and hear me out on this, as opposed to wanting to keep him, we loved him and keep giving him work. And why do we want to keep giving him work? He's charismatic. He can make anything work and maximize his minutes. All that kind of stuff that you just said was what kept him on the show. We'll call it weekly. The reality is, the best thing that could have happened for TNA and Ronnie during this time frame for a long-term career, Conrad, is for him to get beat by the title and go home and rest for 3 months and bring him back as a single. And then get into a storyline and see where that goes. And if you need to give a guy a month or 2 months, then bring him back. The fact that he was so good and say, hey, man, we're going to put him in this trios. Nope, then we're going to put him in this tags. It's almost like he became a victim of his ability, and he ain't the first and it's not going to be the last. But the best for Ronnie would have been to keep him a single, and then, like I said, use him when needed, because every top single talent, you just got to have to turn over. I look at AJ Styles' history in TNA, same exact thing. There are times when I look back and go, what the hell? And then I go, okay, here we go, this and that. And I'm not saying, but even the tip-top guys, AJ, Truth, I mean, we could go on and on. You get in this grind of monthly pay-per-views and weekly television where talent literally can fall through the cracks, as crazy as it may sound, and get lost in the shuffle. And so, it does go, creative's got to take part of it, but the natural circumstances of Ronnie being a talent that can be anywhere on the card and really, like you said, maximize his minutes. That to me is why we're not playing the what if of, man, just think if he had had a third title reign or a fourth title reign. And the timing, Conrad, also of going from Fox Sports, and then we were going to go dark, and that's when the budgets really got sliced. I mean, that 1 year on Fox Sports and then that summer of nothing. I mean, it goes without saying, those were the most tense cash flow times in TNA history. Although me and my father had found new folks that wanted to come in, and the Carters said no, and we know why, and we get it, but cash flow was still an issue. So just life, timing, the business, it just didn't totally work. But look how Ronnie's had not many folks can say you've had a 20-year WWE run.
No doubt. Shout out to Ron. I'm so happy for his success. I mean, you got to wonder what's next for him, but let's enjoy the run while we can. I mean, not a lot of people would have predicted this reaction, but not a lot of people would have expected him to be cut when he's fresh off of one of the most high profile matches of his or anyone's career. I mean,
so can I ask you a question? Because that adds to this story. When did it come down the pike? Like, did Cena, I'll say, or companies say, hey, we're going to have to let Ron go. Let's give him a main event run. Or did they say, well, this fits the story, and then, okay, we just beat Ronnie and pile drived him at the press conference last month. It's time to let him go. That's where, to me, when the podcast comes out, the story comes out in years to come, it'll be interesting to go, huh?
Can I venture a guess? Can I freestyle a guess?
I'm curious to kind of like what decision was made first, because I don't know. It feels very, very knee-jerk, reactive, and that's not productive in this business.
They made a panda decision, in my opinion. Let me explain.
Okay.
Vince McMahon was great, close personal friends with Ron Killings. True or false?
Very tight.
Vince McMahon, above almost anything else, rewarded loyalty. True or false?
Yes, sir.
So if every time anyone asked Ron Killings to do something during the Vince McMahon regime, not only was it done amazingly well. It feels like, and I could be wrong, but I would suggest that perhaps Ron Killings was being paid at a rate that wasn't necessarily commensurate with the way he was being used on television. And I think when TKO, go ahead.
That's subjective. What's being used on television, how he's being used on television. Like you're saying, because he was a bit player.
I'm saying if he was making $2 million a year, I don't know what the number was.
Okay.
But was he used at that level?
I got you.
And I think in sports, sometimes when you have you got a lot of hope for a guy, right, coming out of the draft or what have you, and you throw a bunch of money on him, and sometimes he doesn't perform to that level, then you feel like, well, we got to cut him. Well, that's different because that's a real sport, and we're not saying that Ron isn't producing. Ron was doing everything he was asked and making every segment work. But if creative, for whatever reason, just decided he's the comedy guy, he's not necessarily the top guy, and you have such a crowded roster. I mean, people talk about AEW having a bloated roster. There are so many talented people under contract from every organization. The trouble is there's not enough time to showcase them all.
That's right.
So you wind up getting sprinkles of Ron rather than consistent use of Ron. And I feel like anytime this subject may have come up on the Vince McMahon side of things, people probably knew, well, that's a non-starter. That's his boy. We're going to take care of him. So just move on. Because, let's not forget, allegedly, Vince is the same guy who went and told Brett, I can't afford your contract, September 22nd, 1997. And then when Shawn gets hurt in March of 98, he doesn't wrestle again for years and gets paid the whole time. Same guy, different set of circumstances, but it's based on relationship. So I believe, and again, I have no inside information, my best guess is that Vince was taking care of Ron. And now this is not WWE and it's not Vince McMahon, it's TKO. So now we've got to actually look at everything and reevaluate. And you and I talked about this when the TKO first happened. When that was first announced, I said pay scales are going down, and I stand on that. I do believe the pay scales are going down. I think a lot of guys who have their best contract ever and they think their next contract will beat it. I don't see it. But I'm saying all that to say I feel like they probably took a look at it and offered him a reduced contract, and he thought, I think I can do better outside. I want to bet on myself and just see what that's worth, see what I can do. I really do believe that's how it happened. But I think before we got there, that they probably got to that impasse. And I wonder, can anybody tell John Cena no? So if John heard about this and knows that he's tight with Ron, maybe he thought, maybe I can put him in there with me and they'll see he has more value than just being this comedy character. And he can actually do some stuff. And maybe John had a hand in the Ron Cena shirt and he's trying to show, hey man, he can deliver big value. You've just got to give him the chance. So they give him the opportunity. They let him headline on Saturday night's main event. And some people are kind of scratching their head at the time wondering, why are we seeing this? I wonder, is that John advocating for his friend the same way Vince did for Ron with his contract value? The shirt starts selling like bananas. But now all of a sudden he's no longer under contract, so we got to pull the shirt. There's a big backlash. We bring him back. I could be wrong, but that to me makes logical sense as to how we got there.
Can't argue. No, can't argue. It's just it's kind of fascinating that I don't know. It is certainly feels like a lot of cooks in the kitchen. I don't know, man. Kind of, it's just very interesting. And then the presser, and then
let me ask you this. Let me say it differently. Do you think Ari Emanuel was aware of what a big star Ron Killings was 3 weeks ago?
Hell no.
He as the kids would say, he effed around and found out. 45 million impressions in a day. So glad that Ron is there. I want to be clear. I wasn't suggesting for a minute that Ron wasn't worth whatever his contract value was. But if you don't even give the guy an opportunity to show you what he can do,
yeah,
is that on him? It's not on him at all.
And at the end of the day, to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, you're better on stats than me. Has Ron Killings ever had a 5-star match?
He's had the same number of 5-star matches that Kurt Angle has.
You're right.
Yeah, same number. So he's the level of in-ring performer, according to Dave Meltzer. Not really. Hey, I do want to mention, a lot of us listening to this, we all just see his smiling, charismatic face, and we want to love him. We've seen some of the pranks he's pulled on interviews and things like that. Is that the guy that is in the locker room? Is he a fun guy there who helps boost morale? Is he the decorated veteran who's giving out advice? Is he a combination of the two? How is Ron behind the scenes?
Great guy, hard worker, comes with his game face on. He just knows how to entertain. And that's why I think, and I've said it so many times on this platform, in this industry, playing an extension of your own personality, the DNA of what's in you, is by far the secret, or one of the secrets to success. It's the pathway. You are it's easy to bring it out. What you see on TV of R-Truth, that's a sliver of Ronnie's personality. You saw it in TNA when he was a very, very shocking, if you will, and just he can play. He can do some scathing heel promos. That's another part of his personality. The Jackie Crockett story and coming up, and whether he's talking about Tupac or any other form of music, his passion. That's who Ronnie is. Ronnie, in a lot of ways, wears his life on his sleeves, and that's who he is. And man, he'll give you the shirt off his back. So at the core, he's a good dude as well. On top of everything, him being a dynamic performer, straight up great guy.
Next week, we're going to be talking about his match with the Outlaw, and it all happened on, I can't believe this is real, Slammiversary 2005.
Damn.
We're just a couple of weeks away. As you and I are recording this, we are 10 days away from the 20-year anniversary of that program.
Jesus.
And what a roster this was in 2005. The dark match that night was Simon Diamond and Triton against Sonny Siaki and Apollo. Then we started an X Division 6-way match with Jarrell Clark, Mr. 630, Elix Skipper, Delirious, Amazing Red, Shark Boy, and Zach Gowen. Then we've got Alex Shelley, the same one you see on SmackDown these days, wrestling Shocker. Outlaw in there, that's Billy Gunn against Ron Killings. The Naturals, 2 TNA originals, Andy Douglas and Chase Stevens, are going to be working against Eric Young and Petey Williams. They're known as Team Canada. Friend of the show, Sanjay Dutt, is going to be in there with Samoa Joe. Bobby Roode has Coach D'Amore in his corner as he takes on Lance Hoyt.
Damn.
America's Most Wanted is Chris Storm and James Storm. Chris Harris and James Storm, and they take on 3 Live Crew, which is BG James and Conan with Ron Killings in their corner. Then we've got a 3-way for the X Division title with Christopher Daniels, Chris Sabin, and Michael Shane. But in the main event, what a star-studded affair it was. It's a King of the Mountain match for the World Heavyweight title. AJ Styles comes in as the champ. He'll be defending against Raven, Abyss, Monty Brown, and Sean Waltman. I'm looking forward to us talking about this one, man. It's hard to believe Slammiversary 05 was 20 years ago, Jeff.
Unbelievable.
What a roster you guys had. That's what we're doing next week. If you haven't already, go hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. We're probably going to be doing that one live on YouTube, and that'll be your chance to ask Jeff anything you want. It's at myworldpod.com. That's myworldpod.com. You want to do 2 things when you get there. Hit the subscribe button. It's free. And turn on the notifications bell. So the next time we're live, you'll be able to ask Jeff anything you want. Jeff, I love talking about Ron Killings. I can't wait to see what's next for his career. I think we're both pulling for him. And if I'm honest with you, I'm excited to see what life looks like after WWE for Ron. I mean, I want him to build that name as much as he can there. But I think he's got crossover appeal. I think he can be a big star to non-wrestling fans, don't you?
Oh, without question. Just sitting here thinking about the timing and, we're going back. You think the wrestling business changed, the music business has changed, and how the labels used to run everything. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but Ronnie really wanted to make a go of his music business 20 years ago in that the wrestling company, whether it's TNA or WWE or whoever it may be, would want a part of it. Now that he has a massive social media following, we just saw what happened 45 million views later, the power of his ability to ignite audiences, and he's got producers and he does a lot himself. Him coming up with the right hook and whatever it may be, I just think in a lot of ways, Ronnie's best days in the entertainment world are to come. And I couldn't be more excited for him. I really couldn't.
Before I let you out of here, I got to ask, or I'm going to get all kind of hate tweets. I know you won't tell me the name, and I understand why.
Oh boy.
But do you know who Ron was referring to in the email? The guy who was using harsh language towards him?
I don't. Do you?
I don't.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean,
you have an idea? You have a guess?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, I would have to look at the date and then go back to see who was there. But I would think we'd be able to point the fingers.
2007.
Okay.
Not any help.
And off the top of my head, nothing just goes boom.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we'll try again next week. I know we're going to have a lot of fun talking about Slammiversary 2005. Hey, in the meantime, where are you headed tomorrow, Jeff?
Portland, Oregon.
There you go. Tickets are on sale now at AEWTIX.com. Go check them out. Double J coming to a town near you at AEWTIX.com, and coming your way next week is Slammiversary 2005 right here on My World.
Peace.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.